the Gemara that we were learning, there really is a question. I mentioned to you about the chrein that we have on Pesach, that it's ground up, or we shred it. And one of the commentaries, the Chavez Das, a halachic authority, he questions that shredding up that we do based on our Gemara. Now, the reason he questions it based on our Gemara is because our Gemara does have the two views. It has Rav Huna and it has Rav Yehuda. The Reb Zera was saying that when we were in the base medrash of Rav Yehuda, he told us about the head of the turnip. If it's cut into small pieces, the bracha is the ha'adama. If it's cut into big pieces, ha'adama. If it's cut into small pieces, it loses its bracha of ha'adama. It becomes a shahako. That's what he said. In the Hebrew, in the Aramaic, it's called gargalidai delifta. Gargalidi delifta. That's the term. The heads of the turnip. Now that was Rav Huna's opinion. When we went to Rav Yehuda, he said, nah, they're both going to be ha'adama. And the reason why it's cut up so much is because it's going to sweeten its flavor of the turnip, and therefore the bracha doesn't lose its bracha. The question on this Gemara is really from something that we learned earlier, and that is that we learned a while back, and we had discussions about peanut butter and cashew butter and mashed potatoes and other foods that are mashed and ground and completely broken, and we called it trima. And trima was the source of this halacha, because trima was referring to dates that were mushed together. You took out the pit and you mushed the dates. And we had two opinions. Is it completely mushed, or are they just mushed into tightly pushed together, or are they like made into a dough? So we had two opinions. One opinion was it was like made into a dough. So you mix those dates into a dough, and the bracha on it is ha'adam. According to the other opinion, no, you didn't really do that. You messed their form a little, but you didn't totally make them into a dough. Rashi said the words einoi merusak, was not totally ground. So they were pressed dates. They're pressed together. So there was a question: what would be the halacha according to that way of learning, that trima is not fully made into a dough? What would be if it was made into a dough, if you totally crush or grind a fruit or a vegetable? So we spoke about that then, that there are two views. One view is that if you totally grind something, it doesn't lose its bracha. It retains its bracha even if it's totally ground. Another view was that if it's totally ground, it loses its bracha, and that's the reason why trima had to be specifically not ground up. If those dates would have been much more ground, or if it was another entity that grinds up much more, the law would be that it would not retain its bracha. So we had a machlokes there, and we mentioned that machlokes develops into Shulchan Aruch, the two opinions in Shulchan Aruch about ground up, things that are totally ground up. And we mentioned that peanut butter becomes a little problematic. On the one hand, majority of peanuts are made into peanut butter. So that is reason to say that is the purpose of the peanuts is peanut butter. And that would logically mean that one opinion would say that, or actually everyone would say that it's ha'adama. On the other hand, the opinion of most authorities is that peanut butter is shahako. Even though majority of peanut butter is crushed, and they have reason that it's that it doesn't taste as good, maybe, or it's not the fact that peanut butter is crushed and even the crunchy peanut butter they said was shehakol. There was a opinion of Rabbi Vosner, I believe, Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, one of the two, a very major authority of today, that said that peanut butter should be shehakol. Although, I think this book might disagree.
I thought one of the dayot was whether it lost the form or not.
Right, but if the majority is made, if that's the goal of peanuts when it's planted is to make into peanut butter, which if the majority of peanuts are made into peanut butter, then even that opinion should agree that the bracha should be. He holds peanut butter is hadam. This book, now that all peanut butter. The OU says it really should be shehakol. The OU online, and their sources, I think it's Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach who gave that verdict. He said it tastes, it doesn't taste as good as peanuts, or maybe let's see what was. Let me see if I have it here. No. Here it is.
You've changed its form. Rabbi?
Yeah, but change form, that's not good enough, because if that majority is made into peanut butter, that means that's the form it's supposed to be. So even that opinion would agree, you would think, would be hadama. That's why the Art Scroll book says peanut butter is hadama. But they bring here Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. He says it remains shehakol because the idea of crushed, the idea of that if it's that majority is made into peanut butter, it's only true when it is crushed because it's not fully edible. But peanuts are fully edible whole, and because they're fully edible whole, even when they're crushed, they would be shehakol. That's his opinion. This is it's not so clear in the Gemara to learn this way, but this is Rabbi Shlomo Zalman's opinion. That and now I lost everyone. Where? Oh, here.
Maybe when they use peanut butter, you can't tell before you say the bracha whether it's peanut butter or other nuts.
No.
So he wants to say that it's only if it's not so edible, if it makes it, if it's not as edible when it's solid, would you say when it's crushed, would you say that the majority, since majority make it crushed, that's what its goal is and that's the way it's supposed to be. But if it's fully edible the way it is, he wants to say that's the way he's understanding that view, that it really loses its bracha because you changed it. You can't say that it's meant to be ground, even if majority people grind it, because it's fully edible without it. And therefore, you can't say it's meant to be ground. And therefore, he feels that that opinion would still hold that it's shehakol. And therefore, he says to recite a shehakol on peanut butter, even though most peanuts are ground. So that's an argument of today between the rabbis. Yes, Ezra.
So does that mean that if you have chunky peanut butter in which there are pieces, you would then say B'le Priya Adama?
So we spoke about this, that the addition that they add of some pieces, since the majority, of course, is the smooth peanut butter, and they just add some pieces to it, those pieces would not change the bracha. In other words, if you were going to recite a shehakol on peanut butter, and you happen to have a chunky peanut butter, but the majority is really the smooth, and you have it ends up being, it would still be shehakol, and you don't have to recite a separate bracha on chunky. However, on the other hand, because there is a view that even smooth peanut butter is hadama, if you really like the chunky pieces, you might want to follow that view and just say, let's just recite hadama on it, because number one, seems like that is a accepted view among today's poskim. And number two, you really want the chunky, it sounds like. I think you mentioned to me that that's the priority, chunky.
I mean, certain peanut butters make it. Certain peanut butters.
One second, we're hearing two people at once.
Certain peanut butters.
What did you want to say, Ezra? Yeah.
Certain peanut butters, they make it well known that that it's chunky, and specifically that's the reason why it's made that way.
Right. So the question is it if you buy a peanut butter that's not fully crushed, meaning that they just don't fully crush it, and it's not, it's chunky, it's like a natural place where they don't grind it fully, that would be a place where that would be for sure a reason to say Ha'adama. But you're buying a peanut butter that's made in a commercial setting where they just add some crushed peanuts to it. Now, if you want to tell me that it's majority, then I would switch my view, and I would say that if you're telling me the majority is crushed, is pieces, little pieces, and the majority is that way, then I would tell you that the smooth peanut butter that's in it is tafel. It's secondary to the pieces of peanut butter, of peanuts, and you would recite a ha'adam according to all opinions. It just doesn't seem that it's majority. It just seems like they sprinkle it with maybe 25% pieces or 30% pieces, 35%. It doesn't seem like it's majority. If it is, then you're right. Does that answer your question, Ezra? If it's majority, then it would go by that. Or if you're eating it only for the pieces, that might change it also. Is that the point that you're saying?
So you're saying intent. If my intent is because of the fact that it has the chunkiness in there, I should say adama.
Right.
And if not, then I should say shehakol according to the OU.
Right, exactly. That's what it would seem like, yeah. It looks like my father has a question. Yes.
I can stick with it. Most people do not just eat a bowl of peanut butter.
But what's that got to do with anything?
Well, it's peanut butter is usually used as something on a sandwich or something.
Right. So if it depends then. If you're smearing it on bread, then there's no question. Of course, you've made hamaitzi. But you're asking, I guess, if you're putting it on a carrot, or you're putting it on some other rice cake or something.
Celery. I use it on celery.
Right, celery.
What happens if you take it out in a spoon? I mean, you're not saying it on a spoon, so you're eating it for the fact that it's peanut butter.
Right. So if you're doing that, then we've discussed that. But if you're not, that leads us to the next question of what is your main thing? Is your main thing the celery?
Bracha? Rebbe, what is the preferred bracha? I think in
butter?
all of these cases, adama is the preferred bracha. It's specific. If in all event you do. Now, I always thought shahakal was if you don't know, or if it's processed, or if it looks so different, you can get away with a shahakal. But to look for a reason to make a shahakal seems ridiculous to me. If you know it's the peanut butter, I don't see why there's a question why you shouldn't make an adama.
So you're saying even on smooth peanut butter?
Well, there already, I understand the Rabbanim have said that it's that different, whatever. Again, you might be okay with a shahakal, but not necessarily that it should almost be preferred to be a shahakal.
So what do you think should be preferred on smooth peanut butter?
Probably a shahakal because
okay, fine. So you're agreeing that
because it's made that way.
Okay, fine.
And everybody knows it. But
so fine. Let me start. Let me cut you off. So if the preferred bracha on smooth peanut butter is shahakal, in crunchy peanut butter has 35% pieces and 65% smooth, the same bracha would apply to crunchy peanut butter.
I hear you, the dilemma. I understand. It's a problem.
So now, so it's shahakol. So you would say shahakol. It seems. Now, if you're eating that with, now you have another ha'adama. So I think that's my father's question over here is, so now you have two ha'adamas versus a shahakol, right? So let's say you're eating it on your celery, and now you have two. That's Robert's example. You got your celery which is ha'adama, and you got your crunchy peanuts that are ha'adama, and now that's 65% ha'adama versus 35% shahakol. So I guess that's a good question.
Not supposed to put crunchy on celery. Celery was made creamy. So.
I beg to differ.
That sounds like that sounds like
question,
you don't know the answer.
Yehuda has a question, Rabbi.
Yes. Who
Yehuda.
has a question? What?
Yehuda.
Yehuda.
Oh, when I buy peanut butter, I specifically buy the crunchy.
So see?
If I want peanuts, I buy peanuts. When I want peanut butter, I buy the chunky.
Right. That's a good point. But I will tell you that it's not so simple, even with what you're saying, and I'll tell you why. What bracha do you think you should make on chocolate-covered almonds?
Yaakov.
Depends what you like.
So it's very it's not simple.
If you wanted the almond, if you're buying it for the almonds, and so get almonds, raw almonds, and eat them. Stop.
So is the almonds flavoring the chocolate, or is the chocolate a little flavor for the almond? Are you adding a little chocolate as a flavor to the almond, or are you adding an almond flavor to your chocolate? Or are you at an event and you wish they only had chocolate, and unfortunately they have chocolate covered almonds? Well, you'll eat it, but it has the almond in it. You're not going to spit out the almond, but you really just want the chocolate.
But you might want the crunchiness.
Oh, the almond is for the crunchiness.
Yes.
So the crunchiness, I don't know if it's just you're not really eating the flavor. I don't know if the crunchiness,
I always learned, if you go to a simcha and you see a bowl of almonds, don't touch them if there are little kids around, because there's likely a bowl of chocolate-covered almonds.
So Rabbi, why can't you say bracha on the almonds and the bracha on the chocolate?
So the question is, if one is secondary to the other and the other is the main one, then the extra bracha would be a bracha in vain. That's the problem, because you might not deserve a bracha, you might not need a bracha.
Rabbi, can I ask you a question?
We have a lot of questions here. I don't know who's first. I think Robert has been patiently waiting.
Let me just.
We've got a few people patiently waiting.
Thank you. All right, listen. Before we started this conversation, I thought I had it down to a science, which is everything you do by volume. And so creamy is always a greater volume than chunky. And a covered almond, the almond itself, there's more almond than there is either on chocolate or whatever the glossy white stuff they put on almonds also. And so that to me was the formula. That it's always going to be, no matter how much chunky you have, you still have to have the smooth, the creamy to keep it together. Because if you don't have it, then you just have pieces of peanut, and you can't eat it because it'll fall away. So the binder is the creamy. So for me, it's a matter of percentage. No matter how much you have for chunk, you still have to have a greater volume of cream to be able to keep it together. So I don't know, maybe it's too simplistic.
That's very interesting what you say. If you're looking at the creamy part as just a binder and not for flavor, then according to that, binders are really not so significant when it comes to brachas, because we find even flour, if it's only a binder, it loses, even as important flour is, it loses its significance. So if you're looking at it as a binder, I would question if you should, even if it's majority. So in other words, your point about majority is a general idea that something that's the majority we consider primary. That's very
Right.
general. If there is, like, for example, in this case, an almond and a chocolate. So the chocolate, if it really doesn't matter which one is the majority, because here you have two distinct flavors that one of them is the main reason you're eating it. And so if one happens to be a little bigger than the other, it really, that's not going to really say that that's the purpose. But if you have a 20% versus an 80% of a food, then generally you'll say it goes by. But in other words, there are exceptions to the rule of going by majority. And this would be an exception, would be chocolate covered raisins or almonds or whatever it is. And the interesting thing is chocolate, some say should be ha'etz. So, and some say should be ha'adama. So you might be able to follow one of those views and get around it. But in any event, in this case, you wouldn't go by the majority. And the same thing would apply to your scenario of peanut butter, which if it's just a binder, I don't know if that matters then if it's a majority or not. I don't think you would go by it because it's just a binder. I think it has to do with flavor. And I think people like, more than eating peanuts, they do like a certain buttery texture and flavor and so on. And that's why they're eating it. And they might like a crunch, but I don't think the crunch is necessarily I think it's more like having a flavor. It's like having pancakes, so the maple syrup on the pan. Do you like maple syrup? Yeah, I like it better than pancakes, but I'm eating this for pancakes. I happen to have maple syrup to add flavor. So I think the crunchy peanut butter is adding crunch to the peanut butter, and the chocolate covered almond might be only for chocolate, or it might be to add a little flavor to the almond as well. So, with the chocolate covered almonds, I think you have two ways of looking at it. But I think with other foods, I think you often can tell like what is the main thing, and you just want a little flavor. You're adding sugar to your oatmeal, but the main thing is not the sugar. You're adding some sugar to your frying nuts and having a nice flavor, adding some honey covered peanuts. So is the main thing the honey covered? It's more of a flavor. You're adding some wasabi or some other thing to your peanuts. They have these smoked peanuts and the other peanuts, cocoa peanuts, and they have almonds, the cocoa covered almonds, the cocoa flavored. They have like smokehouse almonds and so on. All these types of things. It seems like you're just adding some flavor. You're eating a healthy food, which is the almonds, and you're adding some flavor to it. So that's the way. But then again, everyone has their own things. I'm just throwing a general way people act, but there might be people who only like the crunch and only want crunchy. Really, it's only the crunch. I would think for them, maybe they should consider that their main thing, especially if they know themselves, they know their interests. And Yehuda, in your case, you only like the crunchy. And you maybe you should make ha'adama on it. I would definitely consider that, or recite ha'adama and shahakal on two other foods.
I use a cop out. I before I eat the peanut butter, I eat something that is definitely a ha'adama.
Oh, okay. Wow. So you cover yourself.
Right.
Okay.
Smears it on a potato.
Right. Okay. So, Ruvain, you had a question.
Yeah, I would argue that with the suggestion that peanuts are only grown for making peanut butter. A lot of people like just to eat the peanuts out of a jar or out of a can, which is obviously Beret Pri Adama, but I'm not so sure that the peanuts are grown dafka just to make peanut butter.
Right. Well, the thing that the source that I was using for that point was the fact that the majority of peanuts sold in the US and maybe abroad as well is for peanut butter. Once that becomes the majority, in other words, once that statistics is known, so naturally that becomes the purpose of peanuts. You look at that does take a a very strong stand in regard to bracha, saying that that's what peanuts are meant to be because that's the majority. It doesn't mean that you should make a shahakol on a regular peanut because it's not now you're doing something abnormal. But this is the more norm than the other. This is a little extra. This is, or at least equal. This is equally as important. And the fact that it's majority does play a role that you can't say that you've ruined it. You can't say you ruined it because you've ground it up. However, the way we saw Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach wants to understand one of these views is that you did ruin it because it was fully edible beforehand. So there is such a view that, it was fully edible beforehand. I don't care if majority people do this. If you have changed its form completely and it was fully edible beforehand, now you've ruined it. You have ruined it. But there are others that argue with that. I mean, the common view, and this is the way the Art Scroll seems to follow, Rabbi Forst, he seems to believe that the fact that the majority is used for that should play a role and give it the bracha. Say that is that is considered a normal way of peanuts.
Let me just add, because I just realized in all of this with peanuts, what about peanut oil and the volume of peanuts that constitute peanut oil is not part of our conversation.
Right. Well, they did take that into calculation.
Peanut oil.
What?
Last time you had a glass of peanut oil.
Doesn't matter. It's still,
right.
It's still there and it's sold in volumes and
right.
relative to our eating something.
Right. Well, this is the thing. That when they calculated where did the majority of peanuts go, that they took that into consideration.
Okay, all
they
right.
took into consideration peanut oil versus peanuts snacks, and then peanut butter.
Corn oil. I'm sure more corn goes to corn oil than to anything else on this planet. Is there a shiloh now that you have to make a shahakol on corn? I don't think so.
Well, this is the thing. The fact that majority goes to corn oil would create a thought that possibly if a person were to drink corn oil, if there would be some value that might be hadama.
That's
that would be the issue.
Peanut oil. That's why it's peanut oil.
Right. If you were to drink it. But no, but he was just questioning the statistics, and the answer is they did take that into consideration when they calculated that. Okay, I think we pretty much covered this. But the problem is my time is up, but I really didn't get to my question. The question that I wanted to bring was that the Gemara that we just learned was about the head of the turnip, and if it was cut into small pieces, one opinion said that it should be shahako. What do you mean it should be shahakal? I don't care if you cut it into small pieces. You didn't grind it completely. And the Gemara before said, some people even hold in the Gemara and explain the Gemara before, Trima, that even if it's fully ground, peanut butter, even dates that are made into dough, you recite a ha'etz, peanut butter is ha'adam according to some. All of a sudden we have a question about what does the Gemara mean here? That you cut the top of the garglida delifta, the head of the turnips, and you're cutting in small pieces, you're going to lose the bracha just because you cut it. And then even the other opinion that says that that you don't lose the bracha. He says the reason, you know why it doesn't lose the bracha? Because you're doing it the namtik taime, that it should sweeten the flavor of the turnip. So this Gemara seems a little surprising. Now, the good thing is that the Rif, the Rush, and the Rambam do not bring this law of Garglidi Delifta. They don't bring it in Shulchan Aruch. And so that means that it's not much of a of something that's innovative to what we know already. In other words, the previous Gemaras seem to cover this. And this, therefore, is not really telling us something new. And therefore, it's not brought in the Rif, the Rosh, and the Rambam, who wrote Halacha Sefer. They wrote the law. They wrote laws. They don't bring this law. The interesting thing is the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch do bring it. And the question is why? And then we saw this question about the maror. Now the maror also, the question I have on that rabbi who wants to say that maror, if you grind it up, you might not be a hadama. What do you mean? Trima. What about trima? Trima was fully ground. This you're just shredding. What's wrong with maror? That's shredded maror. So the understanding that I have is that what's happening here is we're talking about something that the taste changes when you cut it. And because the taste changes when you cut it, this is what our Gemara is dealing with. And if it's cut into smaller pieces, maybe the taste is very different. If you cut it into bigger pieces, maybe somehow the air, maybe the oxygen causes it to lose some of its flavor or change its flavor. And that's why in the end, he says, it's bar b'adama because it actually tastes better. It changes the taste, but it changes it for the better. It's fine. It actually tastes better this way. So what it seems like is the Gemara is dealing with is what happens if you were to cut something and it ruins the flavor the way you cut it. You're ruining its flavor because of how you cut it. And I guess it's not so common. I don't know how many foods are like this. And the truth is I haven't tasted turnips, so I don't know what it tastes like. And does it really taste so much better if you cut it? But the Gemara, according to the Gemara, it does mention that. I don't know if anyone here eats turnips. I don't even know. I guess I've seen them in stores.
My father used to serve them salted. Sliced turnips, salted. I don't know if it was in water or whatever, but
my father used to pickle them.
And what about the tops? Now that's why do they speak about the tops? Is that the only part that's edible or something?
No, the whole thing is edible. The top is where that little head comes out of, like a strawberry. You have that green thing on top, and then you have the turnip underneath it.
Because for some reason they're talking about specifically the heads of the turnips. So I don't know. But in any event, it could be that's where the source of the Chavais Das, who is also a big halachic authority who wants to question, shredding the grain. And maybe he's saying because you're losing the flavor, the maror is losing the flavor. That's why maybe it should lose its bracha ha'adama. Even after everything that we learned until now, grinding doesn't change it and it could stay ha'adama. But if you're losing the flavor and by cutting up maror, you are ruining the flavor. Now, the answer that comes to mind, why we could say ha'adama, even on grain, in other words, this is the custom of the world. Everyone does this. So I'm not going to question, the fact is we don't follow this view. This is it's an interesting view. It's good for the academic understanding of the Gemara but we obviously follow another view that we're not worried about the shredding of maror and that it's losing its flavor. My thought is that the reason is because it's that we specifically want maror that's not too strong. If it's too strong, it's dangerous. No one wants to be crying for you want pain, but not there's two types of pain. There's pain where your nose gets red and you start breathing loudly. I mean, that's not what we're interested in.
Sounds like a memory, Rebbe.
Okay, so anyway, so that's my thought of understanding it. If any of you have other thoughts, it's not. I didn't see too many commentaries discussing it, but this is it seems surprising, this Garglide de Lifta, how it fits with the previous Gemara. So in any event, let me just go over. I'm just going to take another minute or two And so we mentioned that so Reb Zera said about when he was by Rav Huna was the difference between if it's cut in large pieces, small pieces. When he went to Rav Yehuda, didn't matter, even small pieces was even the small pieces was Ha'adama. And then the next Gemara said, Rav Ashi says, when I went to Rav Kahana, and he told us about the eating a dish of silka, which we translated as beets, and you don't put a lot of flour in that dish. The bracha is Ha'adama. Now, the dish with turnips, they do put a lot of flour, and he wanted to say mezainas. But then he changed his mind. Adar says he changed his mind after deciding, and it's not surprising. Rabbis over time, they see things differently in different light, and he decided that the bracha should be even on the turnip dish should be ha'adama, and the reason is because the whole purpose of the flour is only as a binder. So this, one second, let me mute everyone. So and here we see this idea that a binder doesn't really change the bracha, and here it's talking about flour, but flour is maybe even more so should change the bracha. And here we see even flour that being a binder, it doesn't change the bracha. And he says, even though you have a lot of flour for the turnips, and I guess they needed more flour for turnips than they needed for the beets. I don't know if the turnips are more watery than beets, so they needed more flour to be a binder. But for whatever reason, they would put more flour in the turnip dish, and therefore the bracha. But the bracha didn't change because it's only a binder. Then the Gemara said that interesting. It told us some health thing about the beets dish with beets. It's good for the heart. It's good for the eyes, and for sure for the intestines. And that's only if you let it cook for a long time. And we did question: doesn't cooking a long time maybe ruin the vitamins? I don't know. That's something it's still something to be looked into. Hopefully, one day we'll have a scientist on our in our program, and he'll help us with that. Now, the other thing that we learned was the water of beet juice, meaning beets cooked in water. So the bracha we said is going to be a ho'adama, and he said it's obvious to me. It's just the beet soup would be just like beets itself, and it would be ho'adama. And we mentioned that is connected to it reminds us of an issue that was something that we learned earlier, which was date honey. Date honey, we said the bracha is shahakol, and this we said beet soup would be ho'adama. Now that was a little surprising, because why should one be worse than the other? Why should date honey, which is liquid from the dates, and the same thing applied not only date honey but applied all fruit juices, would be shahako, just like date honey. And we said, how does that fit with this Gemara that said a beet soup would be ha'adama? How does that? Why isn't that this? Why aren't the juices the same? Why don't they keep the bracha of what they were? Again, it's not it's totally changed its form. Beet, I think they're talking about beet soup. That's just the water, the liquid. It's ha'adama. It doesn't look anything. I mean, it has the color of beets maybe, but it doesn't have any of the form of beets, and yet it's ha'adama. What about fruit juices? It doesn't have the form of the juice. Why is that worse? And so we mentioned there's two explanations. One is that fruits are not meant to be made into juice. They're meant to be eaten, but you can make juice out of them. But vegetables are meant to be boiled and made, and therefore they're meant to be made into soups and so on, and therefore the bracha would be the same. Another explanation we said was different, looking at it a different way, that the taste of a fruit juice is different than the fruit itself. The taste of vegetable soups, we said that is the real taste of the vegetable. Fruit juices are similar, but it's not exactly the same. This is, of course, subject to understanding how that exactly works. It's not as maybe not so simple. Many people would question this. Aren't fruit juices, don't they taste like the fruit? Maybe not. I don't know. But this is a rush. The rush says, Tosfos says, yesh l'chalek, and there's a difference. And it seems like he's referring to this difference that it doesn't taste. It's not exactly the same. And that's how we learned. And then the Gemara, we ended with the question of what about dill soup? If you have a dill soup, I don't know anyone that does that, but it seems like the person was interested in liquid, like a dill tea or a dill soup, and what would be the bracha after removing the dill? And we were wondering what would the bracha be? Are you adding it to a dish? It wasn't exactly that case. I shouldn't really say dill soup. You're adding dill to a dish and then removing it. And the question is, are you giving flavor? Is it meant to be like a dill soup, or is it meant to remove some other negative flavors that the dill is gonna fight? It's gonna deodorize the other flavor that's in it, but it's not really meant to give flavor. It's just meant to it's damage control. It's controlling the damage of some other flavor, but it's not necessarily giving its own. It's not meant to give its own flavor. And that was the question that we ended with. And Mitzvah Hashem, tomorrow we'll pick up there. Okay, thanks, and sorry for taking up extra time. Sei gesund, everyone.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Rabbi.
See you later. Okay.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
all.